ourselves, each other, and the world. My name is Reverend Sarah Green, and I will be with you in this liturgy today. Folks who are online, you're welcome to keep your video on throughout the service. We'll keep the audio off, but you'll want to know where that unmute button is for the end of service. Online attendees, you can see the order of service by following the link in the chat. If you're here on the UUCPA campus, you can scan the QR code at the welcome table for an electronic copy of the order of service or pick up a paper copy there. And now, let our service begin.
Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, where we come to transform ourselves, each other, and the world. Folks who are online, you're welcome to keep your video on throughout the service. We'll mostly keep your audio mute, but you'll want to know where that unmute button is by the end of the service. Online attendees, you can see I think this was done, okay, because we didn't hear the first little bit of it. Okay, I think we're on the same page. This is called the order of service, very important. And I just got it at 9:38 today. Okay, take it away, right?
Well, if you don't feel welcome after being double welcomed, I don't know what to tell you.
Just another pivot in this world, and a minor one considering what's been going around here. Not here. Out there.
Okay. Well, if you have a chalice with you and in the sanctuary, please light it along with me. And I'm going to do the like UU youth version, which is like a little flicker. Those young people are so clever, but they do like that. With our centering words each week, we draw on the many sources of our living tradition. Today's words are from Octavia Butler via Lauren Olamina. The destiny of Earthseed is to take root among the stars. It is to live and to thrive on new earths. It is to become new beings and to consider new questions. It is to leap into the heavens again and again. It is to explore the vastness of heaven. It is to explore the vastness of ourselves. Please join in singing What Wondrous Love Is This, number 18 in the gray hymnal.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Pat Boyle. I am the Assistant Minister of Religious Education and Children and Youth Programming and Parish Ministries here at UUCPA. My pronouns are she, hers. I have a story today for all ages. I wonder if did anybody take a look outside the other day? What was happening? The big storm? Yeah, there was a storm, lots of rain. This is a story about a big storm. This story comes to us from John Lewis, a great leader who died in July 2020. Many people were sad to lose him and thankful for all he has done to bring about justice in our nation. He had lived a long and full life, asking himself and asking us to show up for justice, to do what we can, and just a little bit more to make sure that there's more fairness in our country. So John Lewis, he grew up in a large family, and he would spend time with his aunts and uncles, his siblings, his cousins, and there were many, many children in his neighborhood too, and they would play together. Mr. Lewis tells about a time when he was playing outside in a big storm at Aunt Neva's house with about 14 other children when the storm arrived, a kind of storm that made him very afraid. I'm going to tell you the story from his perspective, so it's like he is talking. So when I say I mean John Lewis. Aunt Suneva was the only adult around as the sky blackened and the wind grew stronger. She herded us all inside. Her house was not the biggest place around, and it seemed even smaller with so many children packed in, small and surprisingly quiet. All the shouting and the laughter that had been going on earlier outside had stopped. The wind was howling, and the house started to shake. We were scared. Even my aunt was scared. And then it got worse. The house began to sway back and forth, back and forth. The wood plank flooring beneath us began to bend. And then, if you could believe it, a corner of the room started to lift up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. None of us could. This storm was actually pulling the house towards the sky with us inside. And that's when my aunt told us to clasp hands, line up, hold hands, she said, and we did as we were told. Then she had us walk as a group towards the corner of the room of the house that was rising up. From the kitchen to the front of the house we walked, and the wind outside was screaming. Sheets of rain were beating against the house. And then we began to walk back in the other direction as the other end of the house began to lift up. And so it went back and forth, 15 children walking with the wind, holding that trembling house down with the weight of our small bodies. Oh, could you guys even imagine being in a house that's about to fly? Oh, afraid that it might fall apart? I am so glad that John Lewis wasn't alone in that he had his friends and families there with him. I'm so glad they figured out a way to work together. When John Lewis was much older and was writing down the story of his whole life, he wrote these words about the event. More than half a century had passed since that day, and it had struck me more than once that over those many, many years that our society is not unlike the children in that house, rocked again and again by the winds of one storm or another, the walls around us seeming at all times as if they might fly apart. It seemed that way in the 1960s at the height of the civil rights movement, when America itself felt it might burst at the seams. So much tension, so many storms. But the people of conscience never left the house. They came together, they clasped hands, and they did their best, moving towards the corner of the house that was the weakest. And then another corner would lift, and we would go there. And eventually, inevitably, the storm would settle, and the house would finally stand still. But we knew another storm would come, and we would have to do it all over again. And we still do. All of us, you and I, children, holding hands, walking with the wind. So, thank you for listening to not my story, but Mr. John Lewis's story. So, now kids and youth, we will walk out together during our next song. And parents, please remember, we will be releasing the kids at 11:30. giving you a chance to have coffee and a chat. So with that, let us rise in body or spirit and sing hymn 118 in the gray hymnal, This Little Light of Mine. And we will be doing 2 verses.
And I believe at this point we turn back to Sarah.
Yes, we do. And we pivot once again. See, there's lots of pivots here already before we even get to the sermon, but now we pivot our thoughts to the important events of our lives, which we wish this community to share. If you have a joy or sorrow you'd like me to speak this morning, if you're on Zoom, post it in the chat and they'll be shared out loud. If you're in person, it appears to be a bowl that I'm assuming you can write something you'd like to share in and place it in the bowl. We will take a couple of moments for that. Let us now take a few moments of silent prayer or meditation to hold all that we have heard with compassion and care. Blessed be. Our ideals shine always from far ahead. And so the gap between the person we want to be and what we have done may pain us. As we enter this time of quiet, may wisdom speak to us, and may courage strengthen us to face our failings, large or small. May we know that we are held by a love that cannot be dimmed by disappointment. May we hold ourselves with that same gentle compassion. We are human. We strive, we go astray, and a boundless compassion gently leads us back. Let us now in silence summon the honesty to contemplate our own words and thoughts, our actions and our inactions, and summon the compassion for ourselves and others that will help us make amends and make our lives anew. In our striving, let us remember that we are not alone. We have companions and help. Some of those come in the form of words, friends, family, community. Join me this morning in affirming our values and the people that we want to be and the world that we want to create by reading the affirmation printed in your order of service, either in person or online. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is law. This is our great covenant.
To dwell
together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please join me in singing our next hymn, Just as Long as I Have Breath, number 6 in the gray hymnal.
Today we will, and we have learned about the word pivot. And it's a very complicated word after I looked it up, because the noun is nothing like the verb, as I will explain. And I hear a giggle here. You haven't even heard it, what's going on yet, okay? Now, my focus will be on how the pivot relates to the human condition. It's a powerful word, both as a noun and a verb. The noun concept of pivot is defined as a core or a rock, as in these synonyms: root, heart, kernel, bullseye, nucleus, the sum and substance, et cetera, the centerpiece. The noun version of the word should all relate to a higher degree of attention, stability, quality, and intimacy. Okay, but this is the Rock of Gibraltar. You pivot from so many different things, from religion and philosophy. But my reflection will refer to the verb pivot, which, as I will explain, if happened too many times, is not really good for the soul and the spirit. My reflection will focus on the verb pivot. To physically pivot implies action, and includes such synonyms as swing, twist, coil, twiddle, revolve, coil, screw, and of course unscrew. Most of these words seem physically uncomfortable and may actually induce vertigo and dizziness, not to mention nausea if happening too often. The pivot will also bring some shelter from the storm in difficult times. The human condition is a true gift, We each are a unique miracle with our own storybook. Sometimes conditions present themselves that the pivot may be one of the only things left that may bring us comfort. As I pivot to my conditions throughout life, I am continually reminded that change may be imminent, disturbing, and indeed life-changing. I have seen some painful periods of loss, disability, death of others, divorce, and immoral unfairness globally and personally. I know that life is complex and suffering is indeed part of life. My favorite understanding of life's many sorrows and how to deal with them is best described within Buddhist philosophy. I refer to the term known as dukkha. It is known as the suffering of suffering, and it is the first of the Four Noble Truths. Dukkha refers to the physical and emotional discomfort and pain all humans experience in their lives, and although a person might temporarily fulfill their desires, suffering, whether physical, emotional, or mental, cannot be avoided. As I am retired now, understanding these principles bring me much peace at an age when I have more time to contemplate myself and enjoy my days. I am grateful for my many years of healthy life and employment, and I have seen so much of the human condition over the years. I am proud to have worked as a registered nurse in many responsibilities over the last 43 years or so. Yeah, 42 years. And I have seen much of the human condition over the years. And prior to that, in my much, much younger days, I was a United States Air Force medic. And really, too, enjoyed that. I have seen much of the frailty of the human condition over the years through my work, and am honored, and am an honored soul to have been a helper my whole life in a world needing so much attention, care, detail, and love. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Reflection, reading.
And
Go ahead.
Your reflection leads perfectly into the reading for the day. Great, which is an excerpt from an essay by Adrienne Marie Brown, part of a series that she titles Murmurations, Accountable to Earth. She writes, I love sitting with mothers in moments of relaxation. I was recently on a vacation with some of my goddess crew, one of whom is a new mom. Her baby was sleeping in the next room. And after a bit of time and talk, we heard the sound of his voice carried in stereo through the door in the little monitor that let us see and hear him. To be honest, anytime he wasn't with us, we were watching the little monitor, watching him sleep, dream, move around, self-soothe. My friend sat up, alert, and held up a hand to remind herself and us we were watching the little, remind herself and us to give him a minute to see if he needed her or was just cycling up to the surface of wakefulness before diving into the next dream. He dove, and we went back to what we were doing. An hour later, he cried out again, louder, demanding, fully awake. She moved quickly to hold him, knowing his needs with the incredible grace of good parents. Later, I thought I heard him again, but he was awake, and it was an owl hooting deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains. the pitch of the hoot moving up, up the scale and into the moonlight. Another time it was a cat nearby, mewling for attention. I was reading a book about a cat, and for a moment, fiction and fantasy merged as I felt certain I knew what the cat meant. Now. The baby, the owl, the cat, they all sounded the same to me, each crying out for attention, for care in a language that translates across species. This pattern of screaming prayer returns me to the familiar question: how do we hear beyond the human cry for help? The earth seems to be crying. I hear the concurrent calls of 1/3 of Pakistan underwater and massive floods, Jackson, Mississippi without water for drinking or toilet flushing, Puerto Rico's power grid flooded out by Hurricane Fiona, and that suffering barely scratches the surface. There are fires that never rest into ash. There's water that doesn't recede, ways where we need ice, islands whose highest point is now below water, heat waves that send elders into grocery aisles while chefs cook steak on the hoods of cars. I notice how normalized these disasters have become, how comfortable we are becoming with mass displacement and death. But what would it look like to answer the demanding cries of Earth, to be accountable to the needs of the planet? Given that these questions are likely already familiar to many of you this morning, perhaps we need to ask something different. Can those of us willing to be accountable do enough to counter the choices of those bent on destruction? How? As I write this, my friend Michaela Harrison is off the coast of Bahia on a boat, leaning out over the front prow and singing at the top of her range. From miles around, whales come to her, spending the afternoon singing to her, with her, circling the boat in chorus and conference. She recently gave me some highlights, and in addition to the message, "We are one," which she had shared from her whale comrades before, this time she said it was clear one message was, "We will rule." Harrison is singing and whispering and translating, and it will take some time to understand the meaning of these messages. But as I reflect on this larger practice of listening to the earth's cries for attention, it occurs to me that this message could be as much of a promise or comfort as a warning or threat. And yet, whales ruling wouldn't have to come from conflict. Just being a water mammal on a drowning world would yield a definitive superiority. But I also hear something softer, ancient, parental. We will be here. We will take charge. We can be trusted with this place, even if you can't. This is a time of overwhelming change. We must do more than we have capacity to do on too many fronts to count. The key for each of us is to do all we can and to add our voices to the planetary scream for responsive attention, for care. If we can do that, then perhaps all we have left is to trust that our respite, balm, and collective care will scoop us out of this mess. Or the work of crying will teach us to be so tender with our collective self that we are finally able to mother all that mothers us. That was beautiful. Thank you, choir. Well, good morning again. I'm Reverend Sarah Green, and I am joining you all from the usually sunny, but this morning very rainy town of New Orleans. It's good to be with you all and share this sacred hour with you. The title of the sermon is a little misleading, but I kept it because it sounded inviting. It sounded like the name of the sermon was Sarah and the Inchworm, as if it was gonna be this cute tale about a lady and her pet puppy. But as we have heard this morning, pivots are not often that cute. And yet, here we are. So I want to begin with another excerpt from Parable of the Sower from Octavia Butler. She writes, "We have lived before. We will live again. We will be silk, stone, mind, star. We will be scattered, gathered, molded, probed. We will live and we will serve life. We will shape God and God will shape us again, always again, forevermore." This comes in the book, The Parable of the Sower, towards the end when they are having a mass funeral or memorial for people that they have lost on the long journey, this long apocalyptic pivot after pivot after pivot journey. And those are the words they choose to memorialize their loved ones. So many transitions need these words. And many sages give them to us in different ways. Issei Barnwell, Octavia Butler, our Unitarian Universalist young people. But let's look at Butler's words a little closer. She starts with a very bold proclamation, probably for her audience as well as the people gathered this morning. It does make some assumptions. But I bet when taken a little bit from the clouds and dropped into closer to reality, I bet you have a few examples of your past lives. Maybe you even speak about them in that dramatic way I do when I'm talking about high school Sarah or college or grad school Sarah in my past life, or having moments of reflection on the past that demand pause because there's just oceans and seas between there and now. For example, I am born and raised in New Orleans, but I left after my senior year of high school and have been to Vermont and Tennessee. And moving back in December of 2020, there are oceans and seas apart from who I was when I left home to who I am now, with a family and different questions, different possibilities. But in case you're having a hard time finding an example of your own, the writer Julian Brave Noisecat, who's a member of the Canham Land Lake Band Tusquechin, who's an Indigenous writer, writes this: "Although I never heard it articulated the way Cowboy expressed it, I already knew that we were an apocalyptic people. My dad is a recovering alcoholic Indian artist, and parts of our family would seem over the top in a Sherman Alexie novel. In our language, the traditional way to say good morning is Chewinuk. But it doesn't mean good morning. It literally translates to you survived the night. In the first week of the pandemic, what feels like decades ago, sometimes others it feels like an hour ago, I noticed Native folks posting videos of themselves dancing and praying for a sick world. The last time Native folks seemed and Native life seemed on the brink of apocalypse, it was the end of the 19th century. And the indigenous folks were also dancing. They called it the ghost dance. It foretold a world in which the colonists disappeared, the buffalo returned, and the land was restored to the people. That spiritual movement ended on December 29th, 1890, when the US military gunned down hundreds of Lakota ghost dancers and buried their bodies in a mass grave. Noise Cat continues, as Native people, we have endured some of the darkest chapters in history and emerged knowing who we are, where we come from, and what we stand for. We've inherited a vision so audacious, it terrified our oppressors. It's a worldview that celebrates beauty, defiance, and a playful wagging of the finger at the people who tried to kill us. After the pandemic, but as the climate crisis unfolds, maybe more people will understand what it means to survive and still dream like us. God will shape us again, always again, forevermore. Indigenous people are people who have lived before and are living again. In our verse for this morning, Butler takes her time to invite us into our tactile ways of knowing that we have lived before and we will live again through our senses. She names silk, stone, mind, star. And likely she was thinking of so many other forms of us: trees, metal, crystal, minerals. But what does this require of us? Spend time this morning talking about the forms that require hardness, rigidity, and stubborn energy. I think we are well versed in those arts. I've noticed after the height and continued pandemic, we have built up walls. In some weird turn of events, Billy Preston, the R&B artist, came to mind. He has a song that's titled, "With You, I'm Born Again." It's a romantic melody, inviting his partner to find softness with him, kindness with him. Sometimes people are not familiar with this song, so I'll give you a little verse. It goes like this. Come bring me your softness, comfort me through all this madness. Woman, don't you know I'm born again? Or something of that rendition. Maybe it jogged a memory or two of the early 90s, late 80s, whenever that song came out. I imagine that the speaker in this song might be the world, inviting us to do its dance, to be flipped, dipped, and twirled into softness. To become soft also has connotations of becoming thawed out, to defrost, to dissolve, to loosen, to melt, to relax, to warm up. Thaw out gets us even further. Sometimes we think of thawing out as to become liquid, also to become soft, to become defrosted, dissolved, flowed, flux. There is so much overlap. To soften, I think of a song that I was taught by a UU at the time, youth, in preparing for General Assembly. I think it was the year before the pandemic. It's a song that invites me to soften, to loosen, and what a precursor that was. It's a song that I keep with me in moments where that hard wall gets the best of me. I'll share it with you this morning. It goes like this. Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Try something with me. If you feel comfortable and safe enough, close your eyes or soften your gaze. And as I sing this a couple more times through, let it wash over you. Let it relax your shoulders, maybe your fingers, maybe your spine, your jaw. As just a mini experiment. Sometimes we need these mini experiments because the task of undoing all of these walls at once, it's not always a sustainable or a strategic idea. So we are going to just do a mini experiment with you. Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. I think we are in a moment where our communities need to thaw out, hiding our vulnerability and making our emotional pods more like impenetrable forts is doing more harm than good. It's time to thaw out. Some of our softer forms are created through connection, allowing ourselves to be held by others and in community, leaning into our vulnerabilities, like ice thawing into water. Water can be nimble, fit in nooks and crannies. Let us be like water. The last line of this verse is a reminder that God or change will shape us. And that is the point. That is the prophecy. That is the science fiction. It's to change and be changed. Octavia Butler ends this verse with what I think is the most honest science fiction notion to exist. Again, always again, she says. Our covenant will change again. Our capacities will change again. Our financials will change again. Our children will change again. Our gifts will change again. Why we come to church will change again. The paint on the walls will change again. And in years like this, we are reminded that we have lived so many lives. Our communities live so many lives. We adapt, we shift. And perhaps, maybe, just sometimes we soften again, always again, forevermore. May it be so, and amen.
Thank you, Reverend Sarah, for that sermon. At this time, the introduction of offering. We create this space together, not out of wood and glass, nor even out of electricity and binary signals, but out of our presence. Wherever we are today, we have chosen to be together, hoping that together we can do so much more to make our lives into all that we dream of and make our world into the one we hope to see. If we are moved by gratitude to each other, we may choose to support, with whatever financial resources we can, this community that we are creating and that is creating us. The offering will now be given and received. The order of service gives a QR code and link, and also information on using text to give via Give Lightly. And now, Martin Manley on the piano. Okay, at this time, we will sing in your teal hymnal, song number 1064, that's 1064, Blue Boat Home. So please, if you're able, please stand physically or in spirit. Did I say that? Okay. At this point, this is chalice extinguishing, and I don't have the right words. Let me see. Although at this moment we rest this physical flame, let this flame be something in our hearts that tie us together to the good things in life. And that may we all have the warmth and the brightness of this chalice as wisdom in the future forevermore. Not as good as that piano player, though. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Reverend Sarah out in Louisiana to put in words and prepare the benediction overlay.
Yes. Please stay after the benediction for our conversation time. Those online will be invited to small group conversations in breakout rooms, or you can stay here in the main room to discuss the service. We all begin with greeting time, a chance to speak to somebody that you haven't met before, or haven't seen in a while. Old timers, please greet a newcomer and see if you can find out enough about what brought them here to introduce them to someone else that they'll want to meet. Now, if you're online, please unmute yourself, turn on your video if that's comfortable, and touch hands like this while we say our benediction together. And if you're in the main hall or the patio, reach out to hold hands with the person next to you, if you're comfortable with that, or to show you are connected in spirit, cross your hands over your heart. Okay, go out into the world. Speak love, the word,